Hello. So, what we're going to talk about today is your research paper question. And so, I'm going to go through this slideshow and just give you a little bit of information. Now, ideally, you have topics already. We've done some brainstorming. And one of the pointers I would have is that it's always better to have a few different routes in front of you at the beginning so that you know if one doesn't feel right or you can choose another one. So have 2 or 3 ideas kind of in your head, and one of them will likely solidify as you go farther. Now, what you're going to try to do with these topics or ideas you have is come up with a research question. So when we think about that, you can think, well, what are the characteristics of an effective research question? So you might want to pause the video and quiz yourself for a second and see, what do you think would be the characteristics of a research question? So pause, and we're back. Effective research questions address specific and narrow topics. That's important. It has to be small enough to be handled. And it analyzes, not just to inform, but gets to how and why questions. There's a little bit of depth to it. It tends to add to the conversation of the world, to connect bits of pieces and to have some insight. And it should have something that an audience, even just a few people, would want to know. And effective research questions seem to suggest a structure that would help enhance that analysis. So when you get to a research question, you might also want to think, well, why would we research ever? And here are some things. In the world, people research in order to come up with a new process. You see that in science and technology. Industry is constantly looking for new ways of doing things. And to do that, you have to do some research. Sometimes there's a process that exists that you wonder, hey, what happens if we apply it differently? Sometimes we like to clarify or complicate previous understanding. If there's something you're wondering about, it's good to dive in and see if you can learn more. That's the same idea as illuminate an issue. What if you have a feeling that something's just not right, or that something could be better? You can research it to see if there's more to know and understand. In the real world of research, once an experiment is done, other people have to replicate that experiment. That's how we get to have reliable findings. Or perhaps we challenge those findings. We find out something a little bit different, or we think their technique is wrong. We also research just to introduce a whole new thing that maybe nobody saw, or to make evidence based on recommendations. So there are many motives for research. For many of you, you will probably stay in this clarify or complicate previous understanding or illuminate an idea. Now, when we get going, there's a great format for research questions. And when we think about that, then it helps us have a checklist for success. So here we go. I am setting blank because I want to find out blank, and so that my audience understands blank. That gets you the topic and also what is driving you. But then also, what does your audience need to understand to carry forward? If you can do all those parts, all 3 parts, you are going to have a stronger research question. So you need to have a narrow topic. You need to do the how and why. I want to find out how and why. And then so my audience understands what. That goes back to those motives. Are you trying to question something, reveal something, illuminate? What is your motive? Who is your audience? And what do you want them to understand? Now, when we go forward, if you are doing Madison College credit, you need to have more complexity. It's going to go beyond facts. It's going to be a little bit longer, and it's going to have a junction of topics. So let's say you want to do medicine, then you have maybe gender. What are gender biases in medicine? How has gender played out in medical fields, medical testing, access to medicine? You can also do that in so many different topics. So if you look at this picture, it has intersecting lines. Having intersections of topics tends to get things to be more interesting and more complex. When you are more complex, you have to think just a little bit deeper. And so again, if you are going for Madison College credit or looking really to prepare for college, try to go more complex in your thesis. For some of you, you're working just on really structuring your claims and ideas. You might want to stay with a more simple topic because you're focusing more on writing. That's going to be okay too. So in this, we have this idea of how we can pull back and see a topic and see all the parts of it, the small parts and the big parts, in order to further what we understand and what our audience understands. Now, here are some topics that last year's intro students pondered using. I'm just going to put it here. You might want to pause the video. When we look at these are some questions that are of relevance to modern times. Let's read these. In fact, one of my traits is I keep a running list of questions every time we're in this unit. When I'm listening to podcasts, when the news comes up, when I'm going through a magazine, I tend to add to my running list of questions, which you can see there. So your first step, well, not your first step, but among your first steps, figure out your topics and then get to a research question. And you want to do the format that we have shown you, which is I am studying blank because I want to find out blank so my audience understands blank. It will help you get your first steps. Thank you.